Imagine waking up to a terrifying new reality. The invisible financial shield protecting your wealth has completely evaporated overnight. You are paying significantly more at the pump right now. You are actively financing the collapse of the very system you rely on. Before we dive deep, welcome to World Horizon View. I am your strategic analyst. Today, we are breaking down a massive geopolitical earthquake. This shift is actively draining your purchasing power. We are looking at a masterclass in global wealth redistribution. Recently, the United States deployed its ultimate financial weapon. Washington slapped a 100% tariff on Chinese goods. This is not just a routine trade dispute. This is an aggressive economic declaration of war. It was explicitly designed to force Beijing into a corner. China had to choose between American commerce and Iranian oil. Washington also spent roughly $20 billion on military assets. They constructed a massive naval blockade around Iran. They built this over a 2-month period. The theory driving this operation was incredibly simple. Apply maximum financial pressure to the entire region. Watch Beijing blink under the weight of the tariffs. Watch Tehran collapse under the naval blockade. But the brutal math of reality tells a vastly different story. China received the message loud and clear. They read the threats from Washington. Then they issued a formal government statement on the record. It was broadcast in front of every finance ministry on earth. From Ankara to Jakarta, everyone watched. China responded with just 3 simple words: "We do not care." They did not whisper this through diplomatic backchannels. They announced their total defiance to the entire world. This public statement completely destroyed American credibility. The most devastating economic threat in Washington's arsenal completely failed. Every middle power watching ran the exact same calculation. They did this at the exact same moment. If Beijing can easily absorb 100% tariffs, if China can simply continue buying Iranian oil, what does American pressure actually mean for a smaller country? Smaller nations have been complying out of fear. They have not been complying out of genuine conviction. The answer to this calculation is quietly devastating. Less credible threats produce significantly less compliant behavior. Nations are now pausing to ask if they actually need to yield. Now let us look at the real indicator of systemic collapse. A Japanese tanker recently crossed the Strait of Hormuz. Japan is the 3rd largest economy on Earth. It is arguably America's closest Pacific ally for decades. It is deeply embedded inside the American security architecture. Yet the crew of that vessel paid for passage not in dollars. They paid the transit toll in Chinese yuan. This is absolutely not a story about maritime navigation. This is the exact moment the global financial architecture fractured. Since the 1970s, a specific deal was struck. Saudi Arabia agreed to price global energy exclusively in American dollars. This arrangement became the foundation of American financial power. Every country on Earth needs dollars to obtain energy. That constant global demand for dollars is crucial. It is what keeps American borrowing costs artificially low. It keeps the global financial system oriented around American priorities. French economists famously called this the exorbitant privilege. When Japan paid in yuan, they did not make an ideological statement. They did not suddenly convert to an anti-American ideology. They made an operational decision driven entirely by physical reality. Accessing energy through that contested waterway practically required it. Iran brilliantly transformed a military choke point into a financial instrument. The American blockade was meant to make Iran powerless. Instead, Iran inverted that logic entirely. They became the strict administrator of the waterway. They are collecting massive revenue in their preferred currency. Vessels would rather pay the toll than sit completely idle. They are dismantling the Petrodollar system from the inside. One single payment, one single tanker, one precedent at a time. To understand the terrifying magnitude of this shift, we must look at the brutal math of history. Look back at the year 1956. The Suez Crisis exposed the absolute limits of British imperial power. Britain thought it could control a physical choke point. They desperately wanted to maintain their fading global standing. They deployed expensive military assets to secure the canal. They completely ignored the shifting economic reality beneath their feet. The resulting global financial pressure was entirely overwhelming. It forced the total collapse of the pound sterling. The pound lost its status as the dominant global reserve. The British Empire lost its exorbitant privilege literally overnight. The wealth of average British citizens evaporated through massive inflation. Today we are witnessing the exact same structural decay. We are just watching it happen with a different dominant currency. The brutal mechanics of imperial overstretch remain absolutely identical. We can also look at what happened in the year 2014. Washington's sanctioned Russia and threatened their global financial access. The assumption was that financial isolation would break their economy. Instead, it forced the creation of independent financial systems. It accelerated the exact system Washington was trying to prevent. Sanctions constantly act as a catalyst for systemic financial independence. The 100% tariff on Chinese goods operates on the exact same flaw. A tariff is not a tax paid by the Chinese government. It is a massive tax paid directly by the American importer. It is a severe liquidity drain on domestic businesses. Let us decode the hidden infrastructure making this possible. While Washington was entirely focused on ships and maritime dominance, Beijing and Tehran were building an alternative reality overland, an international rail corridor connecting Tehran to Chinese cities. This massive infrastructure project is now fully active. It became operational just 9 months before the blockade started. This overland route slashes transit time to roughly 12 to 15 days. Compare that to 30 to 40 days by sea. But transit speed is not the actual strategic weapon here. Raw physical geography is the ultimate weapon. This railway runs entirely through the vast Asian landmass. It traverses key nations like Turkmenistan and Kazakhstan. It represents the total breadth of a massive continent. It enters China through heavily secured overland corridors. American naval vessels cannot stop a train crossing the Asian continent. They cannot interdict, monitor, or pressure this physical route. The $20 billion blockade only controls maritime access. It has absolutely zero mechanism for stopping overland logistics. Other nations are actively participating in this systemic resilience. Pakistan immediately opened 6 new border crossings. They did this to transport goods bound for Iran. Turkey is actively helping Tehran mitigate the naval blockade. This massive logistics network was not an emergency improvisation. It was not built in a state of sudden panic. It was a deliberate strategy mapped out over several years. They built highly redundant pathways for energy and trade. They did this long before the crisis ever hit the news. It was designed with incredible geopolitical foresight. They ensured an alternative existed before the conflict began. When the maritime choke point was finally contested, the overland route was already fully operational and waiting. So what does this actually mean for real people? Let us calculate the true human cost of this failure. American gas prices are surging past $4.46. The man on the highway filling his tank this morning. He is directly absorbing the cost of that failed blockade. You are paying for that military deployment directly at the pump. Every single cent at the pump is a political cost. Iran designed their strategic planning specifically to exploit this weakness. This is not abstract foreign policy language. This is happening in actual dollars per gallon. As the dollar monopoly continuously erodes, the hidden tax on your daily survival will skyrocket. The constant global demand for dollars is fading fast. As global demand drops, the cost of borrowing aggressively goes up. Mortgages get significantly more expensive for the average citizen. Basic groceries get more expensive due to massive imported inflation. The data proves this terrifying downward trajectory. Cross-border trade settled in Yuan is rapidly accelerating. It was a mere fraction of a percent a decade ago. Now the volume is surging across multiple vital sectors. The situation at the Strait of Hormuz acted as a massive accelerant. It forced nations to prioritize energy security over ideological alignment. Energy security is simply not optional for any functioning economy. When operational requirements normalize, massive paradigm shifts happen. This does not happen with a loud dramatic bang. It happens with accumulated habit and quiet daily decisions. Systems are vastly harder to undo than mere policies. The Yuan payment infrastructure established in the Middle East. It is permanent and will remain there after any ceasefire. The massive railway connecting Tehran to major Chinese cities. It will remain fully operational after any diplomatic deal. China's public declaration that it will buy Iranian oil. It is permanently on the record and cannot be retracted. Retracting it would cost Beijing an unacceptable loss of credibility. They established a permanent alternative to the American-controlled system. We are absolutely not watching a temporary policy dispute. We are watching the permanent restructuring of global trade. We are watching how human beings will trade and survive. We are witnessing a masterclass in global economic displacement. The United States designed a blockade against a single isolated nation. It discovered that nation was embedded inside an untouchable web, a complex web of deep regional interdependencies. You cannot simultaneously sever economic, strategic, and geographic ties. These unbreakable ties span the entire breadth of the Asian continent. 3 distinct scenarios define exactly where this leads us. First, American pressure somehow outpaces this new alternative architecture. Perhaps Iran eventually accepts strict nuclear terms under crushing weight. Second, the alternative architecture stabilizes Iranian economics. It stabilizes them long enough to outlast American political tolerance. Domestic tolerance for rising gas prices will eventually break. Third, and by far the most likely and consequential scenario, the Yuan payment system and the massive overland railway. Combined with China's total public defiance of Washington, they have already proven a terrifying new concept. A non-dollar global trade system is not a future aspiration. It is a present and fully functioning operational reality. What we are really deciding tonight is not a policy question. It is a question about who we are willing to leave behind. The working family paying massive prices at the gas pump. The family that has never even heard of the Petrodollar. The government that calculates for the very first time that American threats actually cost more to obey than to defy. The allied nation that pays its energy transit tolls in yuan. They do this because their economy strictly requires physical energy. The contested waterway simply demands this new payment method. These are absolutely not abstract geopolitical forces. These are human decisions made by real people in real time. Now I want to hear your absolute honest read on this situation. Drop A in the comments right now. If you believe the naval blockade can still turn the tide, drop B if you think the overland railway changed everything. If the new currency systems have already made the blockade obsolete, drop C if you believe the long-term erosion of dollar dominance is the real story here and Iran is just the accelerant. If you want to stay ahead of the curve in this collapse order, subscribe, like, and share. I will see you in the next analysis.